Hello, I'd like to use this few minutes to do some witch hunt essay review work with you. On the screen are some sample sections of a witch hunt essay. These are various pieces of lots of different essays. So I'd like to go through them step by step and show you strengths and weaknesses and what you might want to do when you redo yours, if that's what you choose to do. So look at the left side here, the one that starts with what would it look like to be labeled a communist. Let's read that introduction and talk about it. What would it look like to be labeled a communist and never know why? It happened in the 1950s McCarthyism period. Sounds similar to the Salem witch hunts. Perfectly normal people were accused of being witches for doing things as simple as dancing strangely. McCarthyism and the Salem witch hunts were both attempts by power-hungry people to diminish their competition without any concrete evidence. While that's true in a certain sense, it's not the definition of what a witch hunt is. We had talked about bad process, bad logic, bad evidence, can't defend yourself, and that needs to be listed. Let's see if it's in the next paragraph. It's hard to believe how one single person can gain so much power, enough power to falsely accuse many people of something they are not. Through the fear of a society, one person can control everyone and everything. Senator Joseph McCarthy had that power for 4 years. McCarthy was not well liked, but he learned how to be feared through his accusations of communism against many U.S. government officials. Excuse me. Those are fair claims and fair summaries. I don't disagree with them, but it didn't do the job that we need to do about defining what a witch hunt is, its qualities and characteristics that make us know what witch hunt is. Let's look at the other introduction over here and see how it does. Have you ever heard the phrase witch hunt used before? Did you know what it meant? The term witch hunt is used to define a person or multiple people being accused of things they didn't do with bad logic, bad reasoning, and bad process. The process usually starts with an unexplained event, then people get blamed and things blow out of proportion. Sometimes, however, people use this phrase incorrectly, usually for blame deflection and to make the person accusing them of something look bad. So it's good that the bad logic, bad process material is there. And it's good that blame deflection gets mentioned, though it's not clear really what that is. And that will take some clarification later in the paper, perhaps, when that case gets addressed. This introduction does a little bit more thorough job giving the definition that we actually need to work with. The point being, and I'd said this when we talked about it, or your reader needs a definition now so they know that they're looking for certain kinds of things to be showing up in the case. It also then guides you because you know that you need to show bad logic, bad evidence, bad process in the case material. Okay, so these are not connected to anything else. Let's move on to Salem and see if these essays do in fact give detailed evidence of bad process, bad logic, bad evidence, bad procedure. In 1692, the people of Salem, Massachusetts had suspicion that there was witchcraft happening in the town. Some girls were convulsing and claiming that they'd been affected by witches. The people questioned the accused witches, but they had no way to defend themselves. The evidence that the townspeople used was not very good, and they didn't give the witches a fair trial. This is a literal witch hunt because they're actually hunting down witches, people who are most likely innocent and having a trial with bad evidence, bad process, no way to defend themselves. So here we get a bit of definition at the end, which may or may not, I don't know which introduction this was from, which other paper this was from. So it might be reminding me of that definition, which is good. I think there's a general overview. They had no way to defend themselves. That's a statement that I'd like backed up with a detailed example. They didn't have attorneys, as we understand that. They couldn't cross-examine evidence, as we understand that. So in other words, the specific details of the bad process. Okay. So then to say the evidence used was not very good, well, give an example. Say the spectral evidence was accepted into court. Okay, so I think of this one, I would say a good summary overview that needs then the next level down of a specific detailed examples of those things mentioned about bad process. Let's look at Next one. In 1692, at Salem Village, multiple young girls started having fits of pain. They accused witches, and the doctor and reverend backed them up, though this showed bad reasoning. That probably needs a little bit more explanation about why that's bad reasoning, but fair enough. At first, the court accepted spectral evidence, which was bad because it could be made up very easily. This resulted in over 200 people being accused and thrown in jail. The number was so large because the process was bad, since you could not defend yourself. The only way you could be sure would be to confess that you were a witch, that you would have then been expected to reveal other witches. So there's some specific detail about bad evidence, spectral evidence. Then there's the general claim the process is bad because you cannot defend yourself. And again, I would say give a detail of what that looks like. So a little bit clearer, but could be even more clear. And again, lots of overview. 200 people, 1692, 21 people die. The governor responded finally. Those are interesting background information bits, but they're not necessary for showing bad evidence, bad process, bad logic, which is what we need to do. Okay, let's look at McCarthy in 1950. And again, a separate essay unrelated to anything we've read so far. In 1950, another witch hunt broke out. The communists started winning political power, and a man named Joseph McCarthy blamed it on Russian spies posing as Americans, winning political power around the world, not in the United States. He told the world there was no way the communists could be winning without inside help. This led to a rampage of rooting out all the possible spies in America. He blamed everyone that could possibly be a spy, any American sympathetic to Russia, or anyone doing something considered non-American or suspicious. Many people were put on trial for things. Okay, up to that point, up to many people, it's a good summary overview of what happened. It doesn't explain why that's called a witch hunt. Let's see if that comes. Many people were put on trial for things they didn't do. He even blamed some very popular actors. There was no good process for determining guilt and identifying true spies. Again, the judges didn't care if the evidence or logic didn't make sense. They would do whatever they could do to get the potential spies behind bars. So again, a lot of restating a similar overview type of thing. The naming of there was no good process, but not the specifics of how that. So for instance, having a list of spies but not showing that list to anybody is a bad process because it's not presenting the evidence, things like that. Go over one more. I believe witch hunts are caused by something unexplained that happened that people are afraid of. True enough. Like in the McCarthy trials, everyone was scared by the fact that the communists were expanding their influence and seeming to be on the path of taking over the world. Again, fair enough, one sentence summary of that. So McCarthy, out of paranoia, started accusing people of being spies because to him that was the only way the communists could possibly beat the West. The people he accused were immediately fired from their government jobs, and the ones that were given a trial had no chance of being proved not guilty. This is the opposite of due process. And that's true. Again, it's a good summary overview. The details of not being able to be proved, shown to be innocent, not being able to defend oneself. So there's a list, and he never shows the list. This is evidence that's held against people, but they don't have a chance to address that evidence. When they're asked certain kinds of questions, there's no answer that is going to be acceptable, because it looks as if they are actually presumed guilty until they prove themselves innocent, but they don't have a process that allows them to do that. So the specific detail of how McCarthy is like a witch hunt needs to be there, not the summary of the case and the mere declaration that it was bad process, so it's called a witch hunt, but name the ways, give the detailed ways that it was in fact a bad process. So you need to be a little bit of a Salem historian and a little bit of a McCarthy historian to have those factual details in place to support your broader social science observation. So if you want to redo your essay, I hope you will take some of these points into consideration. And again, define witch hunt, bad process, bad logic, bad evidence, can't defend yourself, and then give details from the case that show that. Okay, don't have time to. I'm running out. I don't have time to discuss the other kind, which I can do